Hello and welcome to my vintage audiophile channel. This is now video number 39 and I am talking today about the Pioneer SX-3600. Came out around 1980 and it was marked a milestone for Pioneer, and that is that before that all of their receivers were analog, and that's what everybody was accustomed to. But in 1980, they decided to switch gears to show off their latest technology, and that was the Fluoroscan style receiver, which was digital readouts and different style of lighting than previously had in any of their lines. This lasted a couple years, this particular line. They made an SX-3600, which this is, a 3800, a 3900, a 3400, 3500. Basically anything between 3400 and 3900 they had a model for. This one being a 3600, this was kind of in the middle of the pack, so to speak. Their 3400 started out at 15 watts a channel, which at that time was considered really low. It was probably one of the most entry-level ones that they had made, but it was still a good receiver. And this line of receivers was still very good. It was still pretty much almost on par with their previous iterations, which were kind of their most sought-after receivers then and today. Some people that are more of the purists saw this as the beginning of the downcline of Pioneer and the rest of the brands in general. And while it is ultimately true, this particular line wasn't a bad line at all. It had some still pretty impressive specs. Like I say, this one came in at 30 watts a channel. It had 0.05% total harmonic distortion. The frequency range was 10 hertz to 50,000 kilohertz. And it came with a variety of functions that was pretty decent for the time. It had two sets of speakers that you could hook up to, your standard bass, treble, and balance buttons, plus two tape selectors. You could hook up two cassette tapes to it, which was considered kind of a high-end option at that time. Then it had your function, which was your AM/FM phono and auxiliary, a FM mute, stereo mono button, loudness button, and of course your volume. And then up above the volume on your right top is the big massive knob that you use to turn the frequency range for your tuner. Not too far in the distant future from these, everything started becoming pure digital, where you didn't have the big knobs anymore. For a couple years there was some hybrids where you had a big knob and an analog, but you also had a digital readout too, which would show you the station you're on, until they finally changed over to all digital and got rid of the analog part of it, as well as the big knobs. But this one is pretty decent. Like I said, it has all those RCA jacks on the back for all the things I've described, plus something that I never really fully understood, and that was there is a RCA jack on for AM stereo, and I never got what that meant. I know that around that time they had started touting AM stereo reception for certain stations that signed up for it, but it never really caught on because the sound quality just wasn't there compared to FM stereo. So it held on for a while, but it eventually faded out, and You're probably pretty hard pressed to find any station these days across the country that have any AM stereo reception to speak of. Let me turn this on and I will show you what it looks like when it's all lit up. And it does play. I've had it for many years. I didn't buy it brand new. I actually found this on the side of a curb. Somebody was getting rid of it, and I scooped it up, brought it home, cleaned it up as much as I could because it had been abused a little bit. If you look close, you'll see a few scratches here and there on the front, a few missing spots of veneer missing, but the back is kind of still trashed. I haven't figured out exactly yet how I'm ever going to get it cleaned up. It looked like somebody had sprayed some paint or something and got some spatter on it. And I just have to figure out how I'm going to successfully get that off without removing any of the lettering or anything that's on the back. But it's in the back. It's easily not seen and forgotten. The one other thing you'll notice about this one is while it does have the wood sides, or full wood as I would say, it's like a pressed fiberboard with a veneer on it. The top is metal, but it has a veneer on to make it look like wood. That was something that was not that much heard of up until that time. Most of them had pure wood chassis covers, and they started doing that as a matter of cost cutting. 1980, we started seeing a downturn in the economy. Gas prices were rising. A recession was beginning to happen. As the early 80s went on, it got worse and worse. A lot of people lost their jobs. Interest rates tanked, and it was not a good time in America at that time, so people weren't buying the expensive stereos like they used to. So in order to sell stereos, they had to start doing some cost-cutting measures to get things down price-wise, and one of them was to start using metal on their chassis covers, amongst other things. But that being said, I'll turn this on, let you see what it looks like. I'm going to turn the volume down right now, and that's what it looks like when it's turned on. You've got your separate peak level meters here for how much watts are being put out as the volume increases. You've got your stereo tuning indicator here. Dead center is best reception. And you've got a stereo button here that, or stereo word lit up that shows that you're in stereo. Right now, because I am on FM, it's on FM. Both of these are turned on right now, the A/B channel, but I have everything hooked up to the B channel. The only reason this one's on is because I need to open it up and clean it a little bit because the button is stuck right now, but it doesn't hurt anything. It still plays just fine, even though there is nothing hooked up to it. If I did have another pair of speakers hooked up to it, I'd have all four speakers going, but because I've only got the two speakers on the B channel, that's all I've got is the B channel speakers playing. And I'm going to turn it up a little bit.
They're amazing. We don't know. What we do know is we need to stay strong as a community, and we need to help each other.
You can see it works. It's in the stereo.
On a strong foundation of taking care of people.
It does get reception really good with your old standard FM dipole. And the only other thing I have to work on a little bit on this is getting the FM dial tuned in a little bit better, because right now if you want to listen to like 102, you've got to turn the dial to like 101 in order to get that station. It's off a little bit. That's a pretty easy fix. I know how to do that. Just haven't gotten around to it, but it's on my list of things to do. AM reception here isn't really good, so I won't even try to attempt to find an AM channel, but it does work, especially in the daytime when the channel strength is much greater. And like I say, if you want to push these in while you're playing something, that'll engage the tape player so that you can listen to your cassette tape with it, or whatever happens to be plugged into that particular outlet. It could be something else. It could be a modern MP3 player with some RCA jacks plugged into the back of your receiver, so you could play some MP3s through your phone or some other MP3 player device. Pretty easy to do. And like I say, you got the mode here thing, which is basically you can make it go either mono or stereo on the FM. Right now it's in the stereo position, which is also the FM mute default, so that you don't hear all the static between channels when you're switching. If it was in mono, it would be all this hissy noise as you're turning between channels. And of course it has a loudness button, which I don't have on right now, but if I do, it will accentuate the bass. I don't want to play any music that's going to break any copyright laws with YouTube right now, so I guess I won't be pushing in the loudest button so that you can hear it, but rest assured it does definitely make the bass louder. Like I said, this is by no means a slouch of a receiver. It is one iteration away from the big receivers of the past, like the 80 series, which was like the 580 and the 780 and the 980 and the 1080, all the way up to the 1980, which these days goes sometimes for $5,000. This is definitely much more affordable. The SX-3600, which was the biggest one of the line, is definitely a big, massive one, and that goes at 120 watts. That's probably as much as you're going to find up from the 80s. Even your modern receivers most often don't go up that high for wattage, and this is old school wattage. It's not the wattage that they go by these days, which is kind of a wonky way of figuring out wattage. 120 watts old school is definitely loud. Even this 30 watt, I can't really bring it up more than to like 3 or 4 on the out of 10 on the dial without having to turn down because it gets too loud. So if you're looking for something that's affordable but still really good, something you might want to consider is this particular line of the SX series. Like I say, it's the first one that started the fluoroscan. That's what they call this lighting. It's actually like an LED lighting line, and it was a harbinger of things to come. Some people look back and wish they had the old analog stuff, but quality-wise, this one is just as good as the previous year. And they're very, like I say, they're very affordable. If you can find one that's in working condition, you can get them for around 150 bucks from certain places. Even less if it's something that needs to be repaired. And I've never ever had this open because I haven't had a need to do it. But like I say, I do have to do a few things to it. So I'll be taking the cover off for the first time in a little while here. Hopefully sooner than later, and getting it back up to par to where it works the way it's 100% should, and then getting the back cleaned and making it into a really nice receiver. If you're lucky enough to get like an SX-3900 at 120 watts a channel, you're going to have to pony up a little bit of money for those, because those usually go for $600 or more. This one's a little bit more affordable, but it's only a quarter of the wattage. But like I say, for an average room or a dorm or a small apartment, this has way more than enough power, and it will power any speaker. I think if I remember right, it's rated for 4 to 16 ohms for speaker impedance. These happen to be 8 ohms, so it's right there in the middle sweet spot where most speakers are, especially the older speakers today. they have some that are in 2 to 4 ohm range, and I don't know how good those are. I'd be afraid to hook them up to an older speaker, older system, that's for sure, because most older systems were standard at 8 ohms. It wasn't until they started getting into the 90s with the AV receivers that they started doing 6 ohms and sometimes even 4 ohms. And that was just to make the speakers louder. So that's all it is. The higher the ohms, the lower the speaker output. So anyways, that is my demonstration of the SX-3600. If you like what you see, please leave me some kind comments. Please like my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. And I do answer all the comments that are put forth to me. And it might take a day or two, but I always get them answered. So if you have one and have a comment that you've posted and you don't hear from me immediately, I'll get to you. Just give me a couple days. That's what happens when you're an essential worker in today's environment, and you still have to work every day. But that being said, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you have a great day. Please stay safe, and I will talk to you next time in my upcoming 40th video. Thank you very much. Good night.